For those of you who don't know me, my name's Cameron Kutzli. I'm sitting pretty close to where I normally sit in the sanctuary, not too far away. And I've been here since I was born. I sit on the opposite side of the auditorium now. That was part of my rebellious phase, teenage phase, moving away from my parents from one side to the other. But my story is a little bit complicated in that the encounters that I have had with Jesus have been about looking back and seeing how he was there when I felt like he was doing nothing at all. He was actually doing everything. So I'm just going to kind of start from the beginning and work my way through and kind of point out the two moments in time where I was able to see that he was orchestrating everything along the way. He was with me every step of the way. He was actually in every moment, even when I felt like he wasn't. So, like I said, I grew up here. Pretty typical church kid story. I accepted Christ at a really young age because my mom and both my parents were really adamant about where I was going to go when I died, and I didn't want to go to hell. So, really young age, my mom said the prayer with me. Ended up going through life and got baptized at a fairly young age. I was baptized here by Bruce Kalish when I was 13 years old, and went through high school, youth group with Nate, and everything was, pretty easy. The rubber of my faith was meeting a pretty smooth road of life for a very long time. Not a lot of adversity in my faith other than the typical kid persecution or, the worldly peer pressure of life was pretty much the only thing that I dealt with for a long time. So my faith in Jesus was, it seemed solid because everything was good. Around the end of high school, I met my wife, Carrie. And we began dating. We dated for about 2 years and then got married. We got married young. We were 20 years old. Didn't have a lot of money. I was still in school, and I was just ready to start a family. From the time I felt like I was baptized, I was regularly saying a prayer at night, asking God just to let me live until I could be a dad. It was something I had in my heart. I think it was because I had 3 younger brothers. I helped a lot with them. My youngest was born when I was 13. And you're starting to form a little bit about yourself when you're that age. And I was doing a lot of the diaper changing and the cradling and the rocking and all that. So I was ready to start a family, but we knew I had to finish college. So I finished college, and Carrie and I started to try for a family. We tried for a family, and we tried, and we failed. We failed for 10 years. We did not see a pregnancy. There was a lot of miscarriages, a lot of challenges that went along with that, a lot of infertility treatments. And about it would have been the fall of 2017, and maybe the winter of 2017, I really started to make a concerted effort in my prayer life, just in general, not anything specific. But one of the things on the list was to be able to finally start a family in one way or another. I'd sit down and just dedicate more time to prayer in general, and that was on there. And about the spring of 2018, it was March, I believe, we had a positive pregnancy test. We were ecstatic. We did all the pictures, prayed 1,826 days for this moment. I remember the sign up. I don't know if that number is correct. I can't recall that, but it was something like that. We started doing all the nursery stuff and getting the house ready for the arrival of our little boy. It's a complicated pregnancy. About week 18, we found out that Easton was going to have a heart condition. And we're like, at the time, I think it hit Carrie harder than me. At the time, I thought, they say that they can operate on him. We're going to be good. It's going to be a complication, but it'll be all right. About week 24, there's more complications. An early arrival started to become more evident for our little boy. And after lots of bed rest and lots of trying to stop early labor, because we knew at his size he would not be able to survive his operation, it happened anyway. It was pretty traumatic birth. It happened really quickly, and they had to resuscitate him immediately to get him going. But I got to finally, cut the umbilical cord on our baby boy. He was rushed up to the third floor of the Children's Hospital, and for a long time he did so well. They thought, well, we got to get him to a certain weight. It would really be good if he was 3 pounds. And he's hooked up to all the machines and all that. And I remember just being so happy to be a dad. On day 21, September 19th, we had to decide that surgery had to be done, or he wasn't going to make it very much longer. He was about, I think he was 2 pounds, 8 ounces at the time. It's not quite as heavy as I'd like him to be. And so they did the surgery. He had a sleepless night that night. And about 24 hours later, they told us there wasn't anything they could do. And I remember looking at myself in the mirror in the hospital bathroom and knowing I had to make the decision that we had to talk about pulling the plug on letting him stop suffering and be able to just let him be at peace. So on September 20th, 2018, I watched my wife, who had been wanting this for so long, hold hold my boy. While he drew his last breath. And for the next year, better than a year, I was completely and totally numb to the world. Anything I could do to numb myself, numb my emotions to other people, to my wife even, I was seeking out anything where I could withdraw into myself. It wasn't until some good friends where I worked. At the time, I was a teacher at Kent City Schools. Jill Evers, Jeff Wilson, Bill Crane, they're coaches that I coached with. And they're a part of the Fellowship of Christian Athletes that we did Wednesday mornings with the kids, which I had been blowing off for that year, not showing up. They came to me, and they were people, and a lot of people in this auditorium, on the pastoral staff in my life, they're checking on us and supporting us. But they were, because I was around them every day, they were, you need to come back, you need to come back, we need you to do a lesson, the kids miss you. And in the fall, winter of 2019, so a little over a year after Easton had passed, I agreed. I said, yeah, you're right. Something needs to bring me out of this. Carrie and I had been going to church on and off. We really had been avoiding here because this is where Easton's funeral was. It's terribly difficult to come back into the auditorium. So we were kind of church hopping around just because we, knew deep down we needed some spiritual guidance, some connection spiritually, even though I, just kind of went along with it. So that lesson in 2019, I remember they were going to start going through Hebrews with the kids, and they wanted me to kick it off on one of the Wednesday mornings. And I barely got it was the third verse of Hebrews where I was just hit with the realization that my perspective was totally off in this whole grieving process. It was not sustainable. I wanted God to empathize with me so badly and to explain to me why this happened. And I remember Hebrews 3. It says, the Son is the radiance of God's glory and the exact representation of His being. And I remember thinking that if I were to empathize with God for a second and flip what I wanted my son to live. There's nobody that I would not have traded his life for, even my own. I'm sorry, but nobody in this room would have been off the list. Nobody in my family would have been off the list. If I could trade life for life, I would have done it. And when I empathized with God, instead of wanting the other way around, I saw that his son was his exact radiance, it says in Hebrews. And he watched him suffer and die because his purpose was greater than what I'm sure he, than what he wanted that ultimate outcome to be. That his purpose was for us. And from that time on, it was like a switch flipped in my head when my perspective was completely changed. The outcome in my head of where my life was going, where my marriage was going, where my spiritual walk was going, was also flipped on its head. So it was one encounter I can look back on and say, all right, I went through all this. Everything was easy. It was, rubber meat and a nice, easy path, nice, easy road. And when the bridge went out and I was in mid-air just going down to crash, faithful friends that weren't going to leave me in it brought me back, tried to get me back on the right path. And so from there, what would have been January of 2020, Carrie and I, who had started the adoption process back in would have been February of 2018, before we knew she was pregnant with Easton. We had started it because we were, I was praying regularly, just let us be open to anything that you have for us when it comes to starting our family. And so we had started the adoption process, and we're doing those two things at once, trying for a natural family and doing adoption. And then she got pregnant with Easton, which we thought, was an answer to prayer. Oh, that's what he wants for us. So in 2020, we jumped back into adoption. Everything happened really quickly, so fast. By April, we were getting, it felt fast now that I look back at it. I'm sure I would have had a different perspective when I was in it. But in April of 2020, we started getting profiles from Bethany Christian Services. And we just had it in our minds, and we had decided, we had said we're going to say yes to every single profile and trust God to lead us where, He wants us to go. So I think we said yes to about 4 or 5 profiles we didn't hear anything back from. And Carrie's going to be upset at me, either the 5th or 6th profile was for a little girl who had both parents that were being very involved. The biological father was involved in the process, and we were ended up selected, being down to like the last 2 couples. And I remember the morning in June when we finally got to meet. A sunny day. We got up to go meet them on a Saturday, and Carrie had started this memorial garden for Easton. It was I think it was the first year we really were getting a lot of good flowers. And one of the prominent ones around June is sunflowers. They're one of the earlier varieties, and I had just, on a whim, oh, we got all these flowers, why don't we make a bouquet for the biological mom when we go to meet her. And so Carrie did. She put a bouquet together. We went down there. And I remember walking around the back. The meeting was at the back of the building. We walked around the back of the building and made eye contact with the biological parents. And Carrie's holding the vase of flowers, and mostly sunflowers. And we looked off down the way, and there is the biological mother. She's standing with a vase of sunflowers. And I remember seeing the biological dad immediately start tearing up. And the rest of the meeting, it was formality at that point. They ended up choosing us. You see that little curly-haired, excuse me, you gotta cut that one out, Jake. That curly-haired girl, Abigail, running around. Her biological parents chose us. And I think the sunflower thing, that was the encounter where I could look back and I could see that when I thought God was doing nothing, He was doing everything. Because if I'm honest, if Easton had survived, he would have had complications at the beginning of his life, and adoption would not have been something that Carrie and I would look into anymore. We would have thought, well, God led us here, God led us to this plan. We have Easton, we have a little boy now. And I think about that because where would Abigail be if not for Easton?